and I catch Dominic say on frail na yenyan we could see science when na yensho how we can expand the conversation. Where we are now with the power situation, no, issue nankasa ye den because it seems there is this gap in information flow. Into yati the ECG airca, we've not heard from the ministry as of now. Yente the power generators, yente wonka. Gridco is somehow missing from the conversation. Why at your Monkai Electricity Company of Ghana? What is the situation? Problem near day.
You answer na meshasi na mze. Menda mwasese mwa akwenya na minchia TFO nyina. And so I think sir, some of these opportunities opens us up to let the people know exactly what is happening. Yes. But yeah, the time are available.
No, I must admit, say yeah, the inside
sure. Yes, I also appreciate that.
Sure.
Most of what you want to so plenty. In our conscience, and I say, yet me to recover. I'm so sad, sir, what really the problem is, and for us at the center, no, I'm so consistently we've been talking about this. I mean, for the past decade and a half, we've been pushing for the power sector to be restructured away from the politics. And it's like you are just repeating yourself. And that's been a difficulty for us. I mean, this conversation, you know, and we keep coming back at it. And we will be looking forward to, you know, new policy directions. And not to be repeating the same things. And that is what worries us and makes us even question ourselves as policy analysts, whether we are actually making an impact in the work that we are doing. Because if you're doing the same thing, how do you even justify your existence as a policy institution? But the what if is also another thing. See, what would have happened? But it's not nice, and we have to speak to it in all honesty and be truthful about it. To see a problem we don't have enough power generated, and I have to explain that. And yes, you need power plants. It's different from capacity short based on plant availability. And no any problem. No, there are different types of power plants in the country. There are a bit cheaper to run, a bit more efficient in other terms. Like say cheaper to run, and a bit more enough electricity that you want. And over the period, you transition significantly from using liquid fuels, say crude oil, to gas.
Yes,
because we are producing our own gas, more than 300 million standard cubic feet of gas. I mean about 330 million standard cubic feet of gas, which is quite significant from the areas of President Kofonia Diana. We just use crude oil.
Yes, and the power plants.
No? Say, Nyamiadum, produce gas in the
gas. Okay,
and also Nigeria also gives us gas, and you know, we at some point had enough gas to at least meet our needs. And now you hear liquid fuels. Even though we had plants, a bit me used to.
Both liquid and gas.
So those plants are there. But to see a problem, you want to say some of the plants they bet me used to gas. Eco maintenance. They are on maintenance.
Plants need be on maintenance.
Yes. We have plant if it's Twin City Power. We are in
Amandi.
Okay. Yes. How much some would need which is about 200 megawatt plant. In fact, this is the most efficient power plant we have in Ghana.
Amandi plant.
At the moment, the most efficient means it uses less fuel to generate more.
And also, what time I enclave and I say water
credit.
Okay.
And no eco maintenance. I expect to say about around 25th.
That means 200 megawatt from Amandi is off.
Is off.
Okay.
Yes. And TAPCO, TICO, Nina so. Part are down for maintenance.
Okay.
And also I say
so how many megawatts?
No track here. We're losing even probably half of those plants, you know. And we have about 600 megawatts.
Okay.
We lose about 300
megawatts
from
off.
that side.
Okay.
And so off. And Asogli is probably doing around 300, sometimes 354. almost which me up to 600. Until almost no, I think it's mainly fuel.
Almost any fuel.
Fuel. Because they are not getting enough fuel to give them.
And that fuel, no, said the most IPP contract I sign, no, I was buying the provided fuel,
yes.
And a fuel and
yes.
Indeed, they are not operating at full capacity.
Full capacity, yes.
Okay.
And our plant activity is KTTP, a VRF4 plant.
Yes.
And a simple cycle plant, until less efficient. Instead, you have so much more fuel.
Okay.
And nobody's excited giving them fuel to operate with, because it means that you have to give them more fuel. And you need gas and you have to give them liquids.
The
more expensive fuel that would also is less efficient.
And then you dual powered plants, maybe. Gas.
But what I'm saying is that the efficiency is lower.
Okay.
Because they are single.
Okay.
So as a combined cycle, what it means is that what generating power from it's like a simple generator more higher, what generating power from that generator, the heat that is coming from the exhaust can also be used to generate power through another turbine.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And if you don't have that secondary turbine to generate power to make it more efficient,
yes,
it means that you are wasting the fuel on the single cycle plant. And it's not attractive to spend more fuel on that plant.
Okay.
And no, we have not been able to convert it to combined cycle to make it more efficient. It can be out to fuel you are spending more on that power. And now I said the last resort. And so we need enough fuel. You don't even consider that plant for it to come on. So these are the confluence of factors. Plants now yes, check gas now. We still need some amount of liquid fuels to be able to bring the others on stream.
The others on.
Yes.
That is the ones that are available. The under maintenance.
Under maintenance.
They want to make sure say, even if we had enough fuel to power all the plants, if Amandi is off with 200 megawatts, Tapco Taka off, part off with 300 megawatts off, Asoglin so part off with close to 300 megawatts, right? That's 600 plus weight 800 megawatts. It's a enough fuel craft for all the plant. With 800 megawatts off, there will be some load shedding, right?
Yeah, but you have half of assembly that can come on. KTTP is also about 200 megawatts.
Okay.
That can come on. The thermal plants via radio. So we have enough generation available. To be able to bring them on.
Okay.
But
even if we in our maintenance,
we still have.
I can say our plant as a fuel.
Okay. Yeah. So I think so. The major problem at this point is fuel, and the fact that fuel is expensive. Because
and that fuel and your gas, a liquid fuel,
and also the mom, and the major problem at this point.
It is our fuel and expensive with the can talk. And now my plants into power. But are you by this saying, say, so what are your current peak load demand? Any generation capacity M1 the available capacity now. Are you saying say with our peak load demand now, no there excess I baby saying. So what your peak load demand CCR now share offer a generation capacity in ample one. Now for your about available capacity. How are the figures like?
I'm not able to speak to the total available capacity, but at least I know say with a shortfall of 500 to 600 megawatts now. If we put Asogli on full steam, we put AXA on full steam. AXA is about 360 megawatts. Sometimes they do about 16 megawatts. If they have fuel, they can do 300. KTTP 200 megawatts is available. So we have enough generation at least without even looking at the smaller ones. Now you name the at home to say even though we know say they could be available. So there is capacity to actually generate power. But the fuel we need to power these plants even with the gas side. I think so. We have realized over time. Demand has outgrown the capacity of the fuel to actually meet our needs. Even beyond these major problems, now we are realizing that consistently the gas was falling short because demand was growing. So demand now grow to the point either we need more gas or we have to buy the liquid fuel to be able to.
And challenge. But why do you think, sir? Communicating that to the Ghanaian people are a problem, because if government says, listen, we have 3 critical plants and operated to optimal level into Amandi is down due to maintenance. Taka Tapco part down due to maintenance. Asogli part down because of fuel. And there are some other plants operating to full capacity. In the Elusu power do say. Ba mama yemri say we hope say by that time maintenance schedules ni we na ABS cancel the better fuel na ebia bana yato. So you communicate that to the Ghana. Are they na thing? Is it because of the politics?
I think immediately at the top of my head, politics na ma yentimi and communicate. But if you have been in this space as long as I have been, and it plays out exactly how the 2013-2014 dumsor started. See, and politics, and you see, sometimes when it's happening like this, and you meet some of the engineers, they can even assure you that the thing is going to fix itself at some point.
Yes.
And if you're not careful to critique even the advice that you are getting, they can mislead you. Because, for example, 2012,
yes,
Nigerian gas was not coming, right? And engineers, they said, oh, we'll fix it in 2 months. Let's turn on Akosombo. Even though we knew Akosombo, the water levels were declining.
Yes.
And we needed to manage, the generation from Akosombo. The engineers advise that we can turn them on and generate power whilst we wait for Nigeria gas. And then they advise that we, even though it's a peaking plant, almost on a supported grid, they turn it on 24 hours until the point where we couldn't generate from Bui.
Wow.
Akosombo lost almost half of its generation. And then the situation became critical. And then some of the power plants that were running were also, because gas was not flowing, Asogli couldn't generate. And then they turned on Tapco, Tico, and ran them, and they missed their maintenance schedules. So the situation kept deepening until it got out of control. Akosombo, Buyari. And then now you have to deal with a few. When it comes to this level, you need certain level, level-headedness to be able to appreciate that we have to manage the system. And yes, I say, tugumuna because of the politics. Ne yabe kantino. Tugumu.
And are you by this saying, sir, the engineers can assure you, the minister, for example, say, say you need crisis here, the better fuel for plant aye kanya, and yes, we would manage kakrane or hono. In the Yombayana, Finanioma. Those other machines are here fuel, no? Yako overuse mafe, yako problem. But is that the situation?
That is the situation. Even we at some point they turned it on. They say we at peak krano, or more about 200 megawatts.
Originally supposed to give us 400
at peak. All right, and that is how it all starts. And then someone says, you don't control the rainfall, right? It brings another problem. So at all times, the machines are designed for some specific use and specific conditions. Me and for politics in running machines. Once you use politics to run the machines and they fail, it could be much more disastrous.
But the alternative, they say, government should do everything possible to find money.
We should find money.
Na ento fuel.
Any plant that is due for maintenance should go. It should go on maintenance.
But when all the plants go on maintenance, then it doesn't matter the amount of fuel or still you have to share.
You have to share load. But maintenance, maybe a time I'll be here to bring it back. It could be far longer than that. If the machine breaks down, it's difficult.
I know your problem.
The problem is say maybe 1 week, 2 weeks. Na machine I'll say maintenance now because we don't want to communicate. Say you better share the load and I be being na machine.
But based on more observation of the industry, liquid fuel is expensive. How much really are we looking at? Is it that beyond the government of the Republic of Ghana?
I wish I did the numbers because the numbers are not static. Numbers but you are probably looking at about 50% of the cost.
50% of the cost?
Using gas. And all fuel, then you are doubling the amount you need to actually buy fuel. At least around now, oil price around 80 plus. And and it's a tough liquid fuels this year, and that's the difficulty government. And I'll tell you what difficult government has to even go in. Number one is the cost.
The cost of fuel this year.
The optimal thing to do is to pass it on.
Yes.
So I just tariff and cost
customers
and where is the will? Political will to do that. And we've been through that before.
In an election year,
we never had a political will in an election year to increase tariffs. So in an election year, you buy liquid fuel, you have to pass on the cost. That's the proper business practice to do. They don't have the political will to do that. Number two, which is even much more critical, is that what the fuel no sector no, and I would name say what is fuel $50 million ECG,
yes,
and how the power
no send put
IPPs
no, mainly,
yes, and I'm going to generate power now. Say 50 million will come back. Because
from distribution side
no, because you got on power there.
Then it's good business.
Good business.
Yeah,
but
you are not very sure. So we 50 million.
It's guaranteed that you get $1.
Yeah, of course.
It's guaranteed.
Technical losses now are constant.
Exactly. And you know, I buy the car or Kotwagum. Yes, a Sikash. Into say,
and when you run the figures now, it doesn't make economic sense. Really,
it's so demanding on the budget, and that's what makes us crazy around these issues. The way we are running the power sector, it's not sustainable, and we shouldn't be doing politics and be laughing about it.
But the other thing, because again, some problems we now are because of this animal called independent power producers. And I also think it's a subject we have to confront head on. And I know a kind article be about how IPPs are wreaking havoc in developing countries. And the kind of agreement, the business said, you, the state, would have to find fuel for them. Why do we sign these contracts?
IPPs are never the problem. It's the politicians who are the problem.
Okay.
Right.
How are the politicians
Nobody
the problem?
carries their plant and come to the country. You have to go into agreement. You have to negotiate.
And they are the kind of agreements we enter.
Yes. And then you have to implement the agreement. The implementation is also another thing.
Yes.
How you implement the agreement.
Yes.
You know, how you negotiate the agreement, first of all. They are all part of it. All right. So, for example, in today's era, you have IPPs, whether they are expensive or they are cheap. That's what PURC uses to price the electricity.
Sure.
So the assumption is that once I pay my tariff, whether it's expensive or not, it's part of the tariff I've paid. All right. So why is it that we still cannot raise the money? Because tariff now meets it accounts for the cost of the IPP, it accounts for the fuel, it accounts for transmission, it accounts for distribution. So if you are not raising the money, it's a different conversation to have.
But say even though PURC would claim say oma factors are when you drill down on the figures, you would see say most of them are not realistic, and that's also a truth we cannot run away from.
Let's have a conversation on that, and let's expose the numbers, because I haven't seen any context on those numbers. Really, I haven't seen the context, because they have a model. Anybody can go and look at the model and say, you put in IPP's cost is 6 cents. Maybe you put in 3 cents. Then we can have a conversation. All right. But if they are running a model and say that these are the numbers that we've put into the model, I don't think we can just simply say it's not realistic. I don't think we can say that. I think the problem really is that, for example, in that same model and the pricing, the tariff, now you see enough. No?
Yes.
They have generated the output of that model and says that ECG is supposed to collect 1.9 to 2 billion every month.
Sure.
Cedis.
Sure.
All right. Say even and come to me at more. Na bosome restaurant na wakofa 900 million aba. Say na unyaye.
Then you throw everything off gear.
It means that they will say and so no crowd won't mean collect it. Do you get it? They will say it makes the tariff or the electricity cheaper. I the amount say kwaji hu sika bra kwaji 2 billion bra no. Wakwaji 900 million. Wakwaji 800 million sometimes. The highest we've seen is 1 billion and 22. So that is the major problem we have. So it means that more than half of what is expected of you every Monday is not coming. That money is not coming.
Yes.
And this is cannot ember. And what we have also seen is that just adjusting the tariff doesn't bring in more revenue. Because you are so inefficient, you cannot collect the revenues. You're too tariff now because it's easy to steal power. More people are falling off the credibility line. You say, oh, I didn't have to. And a lot of people more are stealing power, and we are losing the power that is generated.
Yeah, but for a more area power, no, what really can ECG do?
I think that is why there are managers. That solution has to come from them. If you want help, anybody can help, but it is your job to make sure that the power that you have collected to sell, you can know who is using the power. That is the job. Unless they can tell us that they don't know how to do it, then we can show them how to do it. Your job is to take the power that has been handed to you, distribute it, know who has consumed the power, and take your electricity.
So we know in the industry, say, technical losses you can do less about. But commercial losses is where the problem is. In the amount for area power more illegal connection. That is where, because we are told say once you string cables air transmitted power, you lose some along the line.
The industry standard is about 8 to maximum 14%.
Sure.
So if you are doing 30%, 30%, that is a big
around 34.
30.
No, 30. That's for. Is it the system losses together with the commercial? Yes. In the technical, and technical 30 day too much. Too much in the combined. And a 30. But no, the industry standard for combined and I'll say
and it's at 8 to 14.
8 to 14.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but I mean, let's look at this. Yes. When we decided that we had problems around 2014, to liberalize the system, that the losses were around 23%, and they decided no, it cannot stay that way. We need to bring in private investment, so that over 5 year time we can bring that benchmark to 18%. All right, and the investment that the private sector was supposed to do was about $500 million. Abaya more than that investment, and we have increased the inefficiency.
And do you believe, sir, with everything you know in the industry, majority of the problem is on the distribution side?
That is where the bigger problem lies.
That's where the bigger problem
because
is.
You see, this inefficiency is priced also into electricity.
Sure.
So if we reduce the inefficiency, the tariff could rather even come down. Yes.
But it also has to be said, said the old kind of say, maybe our politicians and so now in future in the past and because energy mix CCR would always have thermal and you would need a lot of the IPPs to come on board. The kind of agreement we get into with them, why is it possible, sir, for such agreement, the state would have to necessarily give them fuel, adidn't you?
It's part of the political settlement. You see, and that's where the problem starts. The entire committee to supply fuel. Because we'll be person that supply fuel. And over time, and they know how
the procurement economy.
There is no competitive bidding for fuel anymore. Those days, VRA had to compete. They would put out the bid. People would compete for the fuel supply, and then they pick the best out. Politicians now. And it is a giga we are interested in. And because senka bed in what IPP no senka bed in what IPP no they will be compelled to also source their product so that they can sell the energy. So selling the energy become the fuel source become part of the energy that they are selling.
But I would think that would rather have made more sense. Say IPP now over generative power owning a sign off taker agreement. Say power ne bar or distribution company on better. Why should you have an agreement? A buying now, there was a assignment of fuel. As a fuel now, not what not in the baby. Mini fuel it doesn't make sense to me.
And that's what makes the take or pay commitment now even a problem because say who take or pay na say nipa no bejem sisi I mean say you need power. So if it's a take or pay agreement and the power is available for me to take, there is no take or pay issue here. Because the power is available, people are going to consume it, they need the power. But to the extent that there are plants available and there's no fuel, and we have to pay because we're signed take or pay for the capacity charge. It's one money fuel I'm generate here. We will still pay them.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. It simply doesn't make sense.
So until I make us this power sector.
When we give them the fuel, buying recruiters have fuel cost from charges now.
It's a company easy buying there.
No, make us say you give the fuel to the IPP. Now IPP na generating power. Now power no waton ediama ECG. In selling the power to the ECG, do we take out the fuel cost?
No. So there's always an agreement, an off-taker agreement.
For
the fuel between the IPP and the government.
Okay.
And the original arrangement is that it's a government of fuel you take your money from ECG and you pay the fuel.
Okay, into IPP ne beje sika from ECG.
From ECG.
Na watua fuel ne cost the amount buying.
And na nansan hu better conversation me say IPP for say
offset
omo canon 2 billion na buy say 1.2 this and because in their records, in their books they account for the fuel because omo off-taker agreement for the fuel. And they will account for it and the office say you want to separate the fuel and go and pay the fuel differently. They want to make sure that you have paid the fuel because I cannot be out of their system. And mean from records because they also committed to the fuel. And also this our confusion about with the IPP said, how do we separate the fuel technically from our pricing? Because our agreement with the off-takers of the gas, say GMPC and supply my buying, and I say VRA and supply because VRA and the gas free Nigeria, and GMPC and the gas free Takradeba. And they have to pay VRA. The IPPs have to pay VRA for the fuel. They have to pay GMPC for the fuel that is coming from the West. And it has to be part of their records. They have to be part of their books. Until say Abambe Hoko to GMPC. And GMPC be Jai Hoko. Because GMPC sometimes also go to the IPP and say, you hear Isika because what could see Omuko pipeline disconnected. So we need to go and pay them. So when they write or go to the IPP, they say, buying soon to ECG in TI. And you want to settle issues, it will sit in, exactly, it will sit in their records with the Omuka.
But is it possible, say, in our agreements going forward, no? And I say, no, will not incentivize the IPPs too much. Say, yeah, can say, okay, no, this whole things are buying a bema mufu and ye chem, more amon pay mufuel, more generative power, no, power ni available, off take a better. Is it possible to go into those agreements?
It's possible. It's possible to structure the agreement that way. If you want them to buy their own fuel, I mean, Car Power sat in Accra and we used to heavy fuel oil for almost 3 years. They could have procured their own product, no their generating electricity. And no problem between us, cheaper fuel where they can make more margins from it. And then in our negotiation, once the negotiators they should bring their own fuel to be able to do that. They would do it.
No,
and even if it's an offtake agreement like the way they have with GMPC, and it's not a problem. Because we also have a state company which has committed to offshore gas from ENN. You know, if they also have to sell to the IPP, they have an agreement to sell to them. We just have to make sure that chain works. The whole industry works like that. GMPC can pay for the gas. You know, and but because the GMPC can now they also can pay. And almost investment or commitment to the gas supply government now backstop it. And it's a GMPC and me and Tuya are buying a facano. They say I say I buy a Tuya yena kasa from Stanchart. And Tembia no the power no ECG into me Tuya. Now yena will go to Stanchart and go and draw down our letters of credit. And today be a honor they go and draw down letters of credit, and then the charges pile up. Government converts it to a loan, and then they pay interest rate. And today be the 400 million or Stanchart. And that's how it's become. And if you are not there, you're the good electricity musa and abang tuyagum, musa and to oil I produce gas I produce and fasobia and masumai. And I say the generator electricity na abang boka, na abang kotia. So it's a major issue. I mean, it doesn't really make sense for us to be spending those billions. And we've written about this consistently. Nobody cares because you should say you have education budget, you have agriculture budget, you have social protection. These are major areas you have to invest. And your expenditure in the energy sector is, it's more than 170% time. More than what you are spending in those social
in all the other
budget of those sectors.
But that expenditure, where is the expenditure from? Expenditure in the energy sector, is it solely because of your commitment to IPPs? Now, where is that expenditure from?
It's a commitment to the IPPs and also the fuel supply. Because I'm saying gas on the I buy it here. The budget in it here.
But the point is that we didn't run the books to know, as we sign on to these IPPs, we any challenges we didn't know that.
I don't think we have to look at the challenge. Once PRC can price it into a tariff, what is important for that tariff to be collected? And that's why, as I indicated, we are not even doing half of the collection.
Into the ineffectiveness on the collection side, and I created that expenditure in the sector.
Yes, until I said, you are not able to pay for the value chain, and then government has to pick the bill. That's what government, and the government is who? It's you and I. We are the ones paying.
But is it also, because of how expensive the agreement we've signed on to are reflected in the tariffs? I'm a man for no tariffs ne boarding dodo. In the half would rather do illegal connection.
It can be argued that way. It can be. It's a fair point to argue. But regardless of what that is, once it's been priced, me I'm paying, you are paying.
Yes.
Why can somebody say they won't pay?
Including government agencies.
You don't pay any for electricity. All right. Once it's been priced, we cannot argue any boarding, but anya base a line mo opa auto umpa kofa generator, you don't steal it. And it's somebody's job to make sure that people are not just stealing the power. Yeah, and the inefficiencies are enormous. I mean, kasa is opa be line and say when an meter say on fre.
Open meter
onya. And a meter say krana, you have to go to ECG and get a replacement. That's will be measure one. Frustration will be common. There's no incentive for you to even follow it. So will be best over illegal connection. And some of them are even ECG workers. You have reports on them. Companies like a CBT me use super one. Omu use na kasa millions omu kotuana na omaya kokwasa na say meter. In the ECG circles on friend abortion meters. Obianim. So they go and abort that meter. Now ECG some new meter.
Wow.
And this is the system that we are tolerating. And getting illegal connection is easier than getting a legal connection.
A legal connection.
Yes.
But at the point DCG said they took a policy decision to source meters from local companies. And it got to a point that the local companies were not able to produce to meet the demand. And it was a decision to also help grow local industry. Until they stopped the facts on being importing meters, That was a good decision, but of course the downsides are Indiana meters not being available.
I think that Bryce Simon describes some of these things better. He's also a friend of state enchantment. All right, where you say we all drill it down and for swell phone. And so they can communicate it for you to know, say, and for so partner they bread a man for. So we are assembling locally, and you can't trace where local capacity actually comes in.
Yes.
Given supplies now with me. So even if the shell of the meter, we import all the components, and even if just the shell can be manufactured in Ghana, or even have plans for in the 5 years manufacture the shell of the meter. You know that at least you have set up an industry. And so why I encourage you or the barbershop, even if it's the boats in the meter and the assemble na assembling yet me value creation in this country. It can never be a right local content policy. Say obi mesati abna the oil say you should import every single component and just bring it in. Even if you are starting it, it's fine. And then you have planned to over 5 years build those allied industries into it. It will make sense. But you assemble the thing for almost 15 years to Krumhau. You manufacture any component of the meter here. So it's just the political economy issues that you can and the drivers are man. Yen farmer will be say one meter na wuye. Na yen chehun yen sa hon kwan. And kwan ness and ya there are no meters to even generate monitor the power system. Meters ni bi ha enya adwuma. Ofra ma obi amfio. Na illegal connection no kwa na ekoso. It doesn't also make sense. Say meter ubetimi aton on the market in China externally no. Say bia ubetimi aton be $30-40. Never be do $200 because local company na here. It doesn't make sense. Even in the advanced countries omu use tariff to control importing that no. Omu slap import tariff about 25 to 30%. So why can you be tripling the cost of the actual product because of local production? It means you are just not being creative around your own development options. All right, because you actually want to sell the power, and you want to also make sure that revenue kakrana wunyano it is properly utilized to be able to pay the value chain. Enti what the says kana wenya osen kadoko tuya for fuel no, what you procure expensive 3 times the price in meters. How would you get money to go and pay for fuel? And these are the problems you can trace back to how ECG spends money, and then you know that sikano omudi can waste na sana. And now when there was a banter between PURC and ECG
based on
because
cash waterfall mechanism.
That is the reason why there was a cash waterfall mechanism. Sir, first you have a good port no. Because tariff, every unit of electricity no, there is generation component, there is transmission component, and there is distribution component. You cannot take generation component, you cannot take transmission component. And if you can be a good port no, who say na ba and will be now be nyakakra. Ose bentiase.
So among cars, have they said that?
In practice, that's what it means. Because so why na say wo sikana ba was me there me other needs no must spend it. It means you don't want to agree, sir. There is a generation component that has to go. There is a transmission component that has to go, and you only have to keep the distribution component. Because I was say generative power and what distribute. And everybody in the value chain has to be met. And I make us say, even the cash waterfall mechanism, no, if the regulator was that strong and capable in regulating, you have to just insist, sir, at all costs. You know how much has been sold. Demand the generation component, demand the transmission component for the value chain. Because they have to pay. And we can account, say, power na bedru am waje koton.
Because ankasa payment ne kwa angenya issue with fuel as sikani ho, right?
Exactly, yes. And that would also make sure say ECG is going to look for more money. It will make sure that they are also tracking to make sure that Obia will offer power from the grid is paying for it.
But the challenge for ECG, so they say eventually, no, the biggest debtor to the company is the same government of Ghana, who is the 100% shareholder.
We can unpack that. I don't have a problem going to government and say, "Oh, they make up between." And the difficulty I have is that Abina de Oka unim so de Oka, all right. And beyond that, Abina Utria almost 250 million every month for Oka within your inability to supply.
So that is a difficulty. So that we cannot run away from.
That is what I'm saying. It's a fact. Government has to pay. But my problem is that so when you say be the Oka is your potential revenue. Omo should be your major target. Absolutely. Because I buy now do can no kra or san kra gigi sika bebre Lesla ne Delta I no kra ka bebre amount for no tua just to support ECG.
Sure.
You know how much Delta alone is giving? Delta alone is $1 billion of levy on us on the petroleum products. And now we do san no. And sana Esla no more I old pile data. The people are paying. It's the government that is paying. The government is the people. And then you ma ECG for. And it's a uja omo mu wi power no ho. Now cause abana wotua wo ka no. Ono ne offices or the county work na de mu. And government is not stealing the power. Don't account it for how much they are consuming. Now we ja omo mu wi power no ho.
The individuals
absolutely. And that's what I have. You need to put system in place to target omo mu wi power no say CIA to make sure that you can account for power the amount you can account for it. But they with me accounting no or ya ban what te ho okura budget kesi a ubo ni hanya no ma obi o ka beda ha na okotua. That is not your biggest problem. Government is not the biggest problem of ECG. Because when you sit down at the reconciliation, some got na say no, cash water for no.
Yeah.
And now ECG twaboama aban say PRC or twaboama aban say you are the owner of the sector.
Of the company.
And in Bosom we have for 250 million. Aban can say that be waje. Wotua. What does it? And it's aban de oka on call baby obetua. Fa kwan bi so na tua. So oye na dwen say won tua kura na go to the agencies parliament on my phone the next morning prepayment meter na boho post prepayment meter na boho we call the ministry ade be che no bana am say what na broche unim say there one who say light more broche da if you don't do that you know you don't do that because power no once a water free IPPs in no you have to consume it or you pay. And your incentive as a distributor is to make sure that people are consuming. Yes, by finding ways to collect your money. Enti na broche say o de car omo wa na o ye o dada ho a o ba na e de prepayment meter be bo enti na de omo ba na o ma set it as back as 15 years back na e wa broaching you be calibrate meter no to meet your need enti say o de car £200 or set here say unit of electricity near £1 and or the 1.5 at so enti no consume 1 unit be na at 150 instead of 1. That's how they do it to make sure that you are paying the debt and then the one you're consuming so it's creative. So you have no agency as a distribution company to be celebrating disconnection. You have no agency. Disconnected Parliament. Parliament can consume 1,000 cedis plus an hour. Now what disconnecting? No, it is not consuming.
Potential
but
revenue
gone. You go disconnected Kwalebu. Kwalebu can consume more than 5,000 an hour. You go disconnected for 5 hours. No more to fuel generator and say a banker, and then they will so you would have also lost your revenue. Because they were not on the grid to consume the power. So it is never part of any creative distribution business to go and be disconnecting people rather than finding solutions to actually keep them on the grid and consume.
Board chairman of ECG enne o priority area be here.
First of all, me, I think I found purpose in the noise making and the work I do.
Oh no, so
but I'm just saying. I'm just saying that I really found purpose in what I'm doing, and I think the public deserves the work we do. Sure. But of course, if I'm in that position, my priority is to acknowledge that I have a problem, and my priority will be to set targets to reduce the problem. If the benchmark is 30% of waste, I have to set benchmark to say that every year, if I'm dealing with it for 2%, I have to make sure that that benchmark is met. I have to make sure, sir, immediately we can roll out a program to reduce the losses from theft. I mean, people shouldn't be consuming power for free. We should be able to track every single consumer and put fear in the system. I mean, you can't work with staff who are doing illegal connection, and they are happily doing it. I mean, when PDS came, they worked with the same ECG staff. But just the fear, say a private manager, in just 1 month, no more double revenue, no? From the same system, the same people, right? So how did that work with PDS? It's not working with government. It's because we are down. I don't say we are on your right, and people are doing it, and that behavior is ongoing. So you need to have a strategy to deal with that, and deal with it comprehensively. Now,
but maybe the long-term strategy is to go back to this privatization business.
No, I think for that one, I don't mince words about it. I mean, it's not to even think about maybe who is running it. We in Jokana run here. My position, and it's been consistent on it, sir, the government of Ghana has proven, sir, they cannot run business. And you can trace it from every single business idea. Buying a business, no, procurement opportunities. And they will bring the contracts. And you know, we have proven, sir, we cannot do business. And sometimes when we are copying models, we don't even check to say what distribution company you have a regulators, PURC, Energy Commission. PECGNT, NetCon, because some visa a president and appointed. And you know, either you want to have a commercial business and run it, and the ECG you hold them accountable. But to have a regulator that cannot regulate government business because say it doesn't work. And once we decide that we want to go the regulatory path, then we need the business people to come in. We are all accountable to government. And when I'm doing business, I'm GRF waba, I'm tax. Regardless of whether it's your own money or it's government money, you are paying your taxes, you are paying government share to it. And I think that's how we have to run the electricity sector as well. Let's give it to the private sector and then let the regulator regulate them. Ultimately, it's a PRC that would look at the numbers and say that this is a tariff. This is a tariff you deserve. We run the numbers, we know that your margin cannot be more than this. We know inflation and your magic. Everybody is there. It's a statistical service that generates the number, the data. We know the US CPI, which is often used to benchmark, adjustment for IPPs and your magic. So once you know that, there is no way the private sector can cheat us. They cannot cheat us. You have the regulator to do that. They have the muscle to do that. Bank of Ghana can today wake up and say, based on the ABCD, we are suspending XYZ bank. They've been suspending them. Banks nakasa. What do you mean kasa? This is a regulator. They have the regulatory power to do that. Government should resign to regulation. Let's allow the regulators to regulate the
how
system.
that will be feasible. And we'll be my final question. We had the opportunity through the Millennium Challenge Compact Program, to have done this. It hit the rocks. Say, if government is minded to want to go the privatization way, of course, there are several models I consider. India Bank can probably go the GOIL way. Say, if flow to shares, amount from a metal shares in ECG. What has worked in some areas in Pony, say you find members of staff and also coming together and owning share in the company. They also work hard to make sure the company. How should government do it now? Simply GOIL the NEB and then we roll with it, because GOIL has proven to be a success story, at least on paper.
I think we spend too much on the how. And for me, every approach you choose, there are rules that govern it.
Sure.
And so if government want to go full privatization, you just have to identify the rules that governs that to make sure that the people are safe, the state is protected. The government can even decide that if you're a private man owning the infrastructure, and we decide at any point that you have abused the ground rules, you lose the infrastructure to the state. It can be done. We are a sovereign state, right? So you set the rules for any model that you choose. And for example, when we chose the concession arrangement, we knew that over a 20-year period, we were going to own the company back. So the contractors get a good return on their investment, and they hand over the asset
hand over to
us in the state.
Sure.
So those were the ground rules to do that. So once you determine the model, you start to establish the rules that protect the state and the people, and that's what we actually failed to do, even with the concession arrangement. Our posture was that, the past government said they were going to do a minimum of 20%. And the new government comes and says we want 51%.
Sure.
Regardless, if you want 21 or you want 51, all you have to do is to make sure that what you want can actually be gotten. Where do you find the 51% Ghanaians? What strategy do you use to find the 51? Is it to announce to Ghana and say that I have 51% share in ECG? Enti wa o pe bibia no fa 1% bra o bi me say we timenya 5% fa o de bra e bia despite e bia kwesechum o frefre ska fo kroma say let you people pull together resources and be able to take that 51%. Then we know there's a strategy. We didn't see any strategy. And once you hunkrofo bi say local partners unhu adwuma o ma ya mo ska mo timenya put up 51%, and we wanted to hand ECG to them. So it becomes part of the political settlement rather than a strategy to actually deliver value. And that is what the problem really is. It's not really the how, but your strategy to make the how work. And that's what we have failed at as a country.
Sure. Ben, we have to continue this some other time. Inti medase papa. Sisi ade ye better waba.
Yes.
Better waba na yetimi edin komo inti medase papa nyame
sha. I can't me. I'm on a studio hanka. Maintaining camp.
Yes.
I'm impressed with Ben.
No, Ben is solid. I'm really impressed. I think he's really grown in the industry, Charlie. That's some really good stuff. Ben, that's a power.
Finance minister.
So,
I mean, I'm a finance minister.
It doesn't work that way.
No, I don't know. So, who need finance background be a?
No, I'm a finance person.
Because has a bit of finance background. We're a bit of economics and finance background. Charlie, now PhD never dabein. Akaka crown. Drop it. Fellow PhD holder. Dr. Oliver Kevo or ye brutal. Enti you better say Ben, you better see the incomobi. Why? We wish you very, very well. Ekosi essentially higher sempa 94.7 FM. Mama yentie we emra ye ba ko fitonto wa ha Dr. Mark Oliver Kevo e wa ha ye di inkomo e we